capitalism to constantly revolutionize the techniques of production, as happened in the two industrial revolutions, as well as in the scientific and technological revolution initiated in the second post-war period, and which has meant the definitive truth of the automatic principle. In all these revolutions, first machinery, first mechanical and then cybernetic, electronic, and later artificial intelligence replaced human labor. The limit is being reached as labor replacement occurs currently in all activities, reaching the point where there are insufficient new labor-intensive, commodified, and lucrative activities to create enough new wage jobs to replace jobs lost by automation and meet the requirements derived by the growth of population. This is intensifying economic crisis and making stagnation the permanent condition of capitalism, and will soon make it non-viable, as the wage-labor income link becomes more and more insufficient as the main, almost unique source to sustain life and effective life. I quote Robert Oppenheimer et al., the 1964 publication. This group of scientists said, the continuance of the income through jobs link as the only major mechanism for distributing effective demand, for granting the right to consume, now acts as the main brake on the almost unlimited capacity of a cybernetic productive system, 1964. Contrast this astonishing statement with Marx's famous 1859 prologue, the contribution to the critique of political economy. At a certain stage, said Marx, of their development, the material productive forces of society come in conflict with the existing relations of production. From forms of development of the productive forces, these relations turn into their fetters. Turn into their fetters is almost the same idea as the main break quoted from Oppenheimer. The idea, the objective limit of capitalism, the idea that capitalism has an objective limit is found in Boltvinik, one of the main economic manuscripts of Marx, and can be read as Marx's tenet that the application of science to production makes possible overcoming the need to exploit human labor, determines the end of society centered on paid work, and makes it possible and necessary to link income from work. Some experts. As large industry develops, I'm quoting Marx, the creation of real wealth depends less on labor time than on the power of the agencies set in motion, power which depends on the general state of science and technology. The great foundation stone ceases to be labor time. The theft of alien labor time on which present wealth is based appears as a miserable foundation in face of this new right. Surplus labor ceases to be the condition for the development of general wealth. Production based on exchange value breaks down, and production is stripped of the form of penury and antagonism. To the reduction of necessary labor corresponds the artistic and scientific development of the individual in this time set free and with the means created. Capital is the moving contradiction. It presses to reduce labor time while it posits labor time as sole measure and source of wealth. This passage was later worked by Radovan et al. In the spring of Prague Spring, and André Gors in the 80s, in the end of the 90s. The unavoidable transition to post-capitalism will be a non-violent one only if condition and sufficient universal citizen income, USUCI, is applied. James Riskin, Martin Ford have proposed alternative but weak solutions to the challenge of automation. Neither their proposals nor an insufficient and conditional basic income would create the conditions for a peaceful transition to a desirable post-capitalist society. Gores and Eric Olin Wright have strongly advocated USUCI. Gore thought that capitalism will be replaced by the society of multi-activity. Without USUCI, capitalism will unavoidably, pushed by worse and worse crises, provoke wars, repression, chaos, barbarism. My point is, the future is either USUCI or barbarism. USUCI makes it possible for humanity to overcome scarcity and enter the realm of abundance. Saves capitalism, but sows in it the seed of its gradual transformation into a post-capitalist democratic society where greed and fear will no longer be the prevailing motives. And I finish with just a comment on Mexico. An initiative for a constitutional reform in Mexico establishing the right to universal citizen income has been presented in Congress. The initiative proposes a gradual implementation of USUCI throughout a period of 40 years, arguing that it is fiscally viable. By the way, the International Monetary Fund also in the 2017 fiscal monitor publication argues for the same thing for all countries in the world. The conditions of legitimacy for USUCI are given in Mexico because of conditional monetary transferences to household mainly individuals have acquired social legitimacy, which is also reflected in the Supreme Court's thesis on the right to the minimum life-sustaining income, on which Pablo Llanes will speak tomorrow in the plenary. The pioneer country, having a guaranteed demand level, would have competitive advantages that would stimulate automation, not hinder it, as is happening in most countries today. Thank you.
It has been suggested that for the basic income movement to really take off and to garner political support, there needs to be a clear, simple message with universal appeal or framing or value. Given many different constituencies, do you think this is possible or desirable? Second question. Given varying claims, for example, that basic income will save capitalism, and that it will save us from capitalism, or that robots are getting all the attention, and gender equality and non-market work are getting sidelined again, are there particular concerns you have about some of the paths to basic income? And the third question, can you provide examples of successful efforts to build cross-sector support, bring new allies on board, or address differences in a constructive way? What I'll suggest is that maybe the speakers could go in the order in which you spoke, and just take a couple of minutes each to address any part of those questions, and then we'll open it up to Q&A with the audience.
Handicaps are always.
Okay, those are three very challenging questions Mike posed. I'll just make very brief comments. The first question was around, would we have a clear, simple message around basic income that would help us build political support? I think we got into this bit last night again. I think we really need to be talking about values. As Sarah Bizzarro mentioned this in her talk last night, that I mean, whether you're right or left or apolitical or anarchist or whatever, I mean, I think most people, 99.9% of people, will respond to statements of what we need to do to ensure value and dignity for our fellow human beings, and I guess using the green argument towards other species, the flora and fauna of spaceship Earth. So we're talking about respect and equality and choice, freedom. So I think we can mobilize people politically on that, and like election campaigns like we're having right now in Ontario. In election campaigns, politicians notoriously, they maybe announce a costed program, but on the stump, when they're campaigning, when they're trying to garner votes, they don't want to talk about details of policies that would only interest policy wonks. So I think we can work at that general level of values to build political support. Whether basic income can save or transform capitalism, I don't know. I'm going to be agnostic on that one. I think Julio's remarks about people like Marx and Gortz and what they have to say about transformation bear revisiting, bear further thinking. At the very least, and I think Julio mentioned this actually, that maybe we can, post-capitalism is a different kind of economy. Maybe to some extent it's a market economy. Market mechanisms can help us distribute goods and services efficiently, but maybe we have to move beyond acquisition and greed. And in terms of cross-sector support, I think we're seeing that at this conference. I think we're seeing convergence of many people from many different groups and constituencies. I think I would just add to that, based on my previous remarks, that we have to make sure we're bringing the green movement into the discussion. I'll leave it at that. Next. Let's see.
Do I need the necklace also? Okay, wow, that's loud. So I really don't like this notion of needing a single simple message, because this is not a single simple issue. This is a very complex issue, and it's fraught with disagreement, and we need to honor that. I don't like this idea of convergence, because it's based on a superficial and merely apparent level of agreement. Only a specific policy, when supporters of basic income disagree radically in their visions of an ideal society. I believe that the broad base of support for basic income has already been vastly oversold, and that we don't need more false pretense and merely apparent agreement. We need to make the disagreements clear. We need for all supporters and opponents to lay out the arguments and be clear about the arguments and the premises, both empirical and normative, on which they base their support, and we need to clarify and expose the disagreements. And I'm skeptical of the idea, actually, that basic income is an appropriate nexus around which to build a movement. Why don't we look for others who share our broad, grand visions of society, the society that we hope to achieve? And then, amongst those who share the same normative goals, we can debate whether basic income is a policy to get us there, and what type of basic income, what other policies we need. And as far as this notion of politics, I think that if our ideals of political persuasion are based on the techniques of marketing and advertising rather than science and logic, that in itself is a problem, and that needs to change. Thank you. Oh, the wrong one. I kind of wish I knew what this was. I'm guessing it's a microphone. Interesting what you had to say. I have to disagree to some extent. I was part of, I'm going to work backwards. So I was part of a very fascinating, diverse movement back in the late
90s around anti-trade agreement domination. So we were trying to prevent the free trade area of the Americas. And we had at one time a hemispheric alliance of some 300 national organizations from top to bottom of the hemisphere. There were grassroots organizations, faith organizations, indigenous people. We were all working together to try to prevent NAFTA from spreading like a disease across the entire hemisphere. And there were many, many, many different opinions. There were, you know, black bloc anarchists, there were very square policy people, there's a whole 9 yards. The point is that we did know that we had to like prevent the FTAA and save the planet. So we managed to organize together, and we did it very well. And we did it by accepting that we're going to have differences, but we're all after the same broader basic goal. And then how we express those and what we do with those is our business. And it worked really, really well. And by the way, we won. I mean, there was never any victory party, but we won. There is no FTAA. So it can be done. I just wanted to say that. And that also was a moment when we saw that we do need to be rescued from the current form of capitalism, badly. And basic income is obviously a tool. But like anything else, the messaging has to come down to, it is what we make of it. And to me, if you put it in the human rights context and say basic income is a human right so that you emphasize that the rest of the human rights cannot be overlooked, then we have something that anybody and everybody can work with from whatever angle.
Are very good. Is it possible? Basic income? Yes, I think it's possible. But let me start, is it desirable? The alternative, I argued, is barbarism. And this is not rhetorical, this is real. Phenomena like Trump becoming a president of the United States should tell us strongly that fascism will be the next step, the move of capitalism. It happened after the First World War, after the big depression of the 20s, fascism took over the governments of the world. Now it's happening again. After the greatest crisis of capitalism in the history of capitalism, and it's not an accident. It is because more and more the unemployment and the precarious employment is produced by the automation. It is possible, I say basic income will save capitalism because it will provide the effective demand. If everybody has basic income, they can sell their cars, they can sell their gadgets, their iPhones, etc. Otherwise, they won't be able to sell anything, almost anything, because very few people will have money to buy. So it saves capitalism, but it sows in it the seed of its transformation. Why? Because it will eradicate fear to be hungry tomorrow, to lose our job, and it will eradicate greed. And if you are fearless, you won't obey your boss that says do this, which you know it's a mean thing to do. And if this happens, imagine a democratic society with fearless people, with ungreedy people. It will obviously be transformed into a new society that we haven't been there to dream. It could be a fantastic society.
Rob reminded me that since we started a little bit late and we have just a couple minutes to get to the breakout sessions, that we won't have time for Q&A in this session, but the themes will be carried over into the later sessions, and during coffee breaks you can approach the speakers and we'll continue the conversations on into the evening. So let's give one more round of applause to our panelists today. Thank you very much.